Hello, everyone. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our session on green finance, which is coming with a subtitle on building a healthy loan portfolio with climate relevant loans. And I think yesterday we had already a very great floor provided for our session, as there was an interesting panel discussion on how different organizations have actually started their green finance journey, and also shed a bit of light into the different green finance experiences. We saw very different sizes of loans there, from the fridge up to the multi-megawatt solar PV, and also the needs for the different refinancing schemes or guarantees, for example. So for our session today, we would like to go back a bit to the start of actually understanding what do we mean by green finance, and then look into a couple of cases which hopefully illustrate this for you well. So at the end of our session, actually, we would be happy if you have an understanding about what is green finance about, if you're hopefully curious and excited to start green finance, if you haven't done yet so. And if you were able to perhaps also set a bit the idea on how to get started. And now if I say we all the time, my name is Karina Dunker and I'm heading IPC's Green Finance section. What we present today is a little glimpse of our experience, and we are of course a team here who is usually working on these things, and I'm accompanied with my colleague Julia Schmidt-Jans.
Warm welcome to everyone. Thank you, Karina.
And before we then really shoot off into our session and to look into what actually is green finance, Julia and I would like you to do a small poll, and please also be reminded to post your questions in between. We will pause in our presentation, so no worries. We will really like to take all the questions as much as possible. But if you then on top could really use the like function in the chat, and by this perhaps also rate some of the questions which others have posted, then it will be helping us a little bit in order to prioritize accordingly. And I would say, Julia, with this, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Karina. Hello, everyone. So we would like to start the session with a little poll, since, we understand here are all different types of participants in this session with different personal experience, with different backgrounds. So we want to understand a little bit more on what is your personal experience with green finance. For that, we invite you to join our poll. In the bottom right, you see the green live discussion button. There you can click on, and there is a section on polls. And when you scroll down there, you would see this question popping up. So the different answers we have are as follows. First, I myself invested in green technologies such as renewable energy or energy efficiency measures. Maybe you have already a little PV system on your rooftop, or you yourself invested in one of these energy efficient fridges we were talking about yesterday. So this is meant with this answer. The second option is I accompanied the financing of a green project, for instance, as an employee of a financial institution, as a loan officer or credit analyst. The third option is you advised on green finance issues and respective policy approaches, for instance, when you come from a NGO or other advisory services. Then the fourth option is, well, I am constantly annoyed about electricity outages, increasing fuel and electricity prices, and I hope green technologies can help. So here, all the forward-looking people looking for help to solve the current situation can click on this option. And then in the fifth one, we have, I read about the topic, but never actively engaged in any green finance project. So really curious people, this is a buzz topic, so yeah, just curious to see in. And then the last option is I'm hearing about green finance for the first time in this webinar. So let's see how are the votes going. Yes, I think, yeah, I see already some people are voting. We wait a few more minutes. You can select one option. So please choose the option that you are, feel more familiar with. And the question is, what is your personal experience with green finance? I see we have 8 votes so far. Just a reminder, in the bottom right of your screen, you see the live discussion button. There you click, and then on the very right, you see the term polls. And there you should see the question on what is your personal experience with green finance. Few more minutes to go. Waiting to the results coming in. And yes, we wait a few more minutes until I receive the results of the polls. Again, what is your personal experience with green finance? Either you are a newcomer to the topic, or you maybe already accompanied some of the clients. Everything is fine. All questions are welcome. In the bottom right of the of the screen, you can take part in our poll. Okay. I think I can present already the votes I see from the English session. So we here have about 20% that invested themselves in green technologies, 20% accompanied the financing of green projects, another 10% advised. 80% are annoyed by the electricity outages, and 27% read about the topic but never actively engaged. And now I have here also the French on the French voting side. So 44% said here, I'm constantly annoyed about electricity outages. And another 44% said, I'm accompanying financing of green projects. So yeah, this is a very mixed picture. I see we have people, from all sides. And I think we also have here clearly people, seeing the need for green finance. We go now to our next little quiz. Which is a bit what we call green or not green. So we see here a lot of people are annoyed by the current situation and seek for solutions in green technologies. We also have people already accompanying these projects. So we will now do a little quiz in which I will show you 2 potential investment cases, and you decide, is this green or not? And please don't worry, all the votes are anonymous, so it's really just for fun. We come to our first quiz, which is related to a small-scale farmer. So you can see on the slide the picture and the description. We have here a small-scale farmer engaged in cultivation of tomatoes and other vegetables, and the farmer currently irrigates her fields naturally. That is just using rainwater, basically. And she thinks of investing in a new solar water pump, which is naturally connected to an irrigation system. And yeah, what do you think? Is this a green investment or not? So for this, I ask you again to go in the same area of the polls in the bottom right under the live discussion button and vote green or not. This farm scale, small scale farmer investing into a new solar water pump connected to an irrigation system. I already see some people found the way into the quiz. We have already some votes, at least in the English-speaking panel. I can see it, and yeah, green or not green. Think about it. Also, the base case is the rainwater usage, and then investment into a solar water pump, as it is seen on the picture. Okay, we wait a few more seconds then to see how these votes turn out. So far, 100% say it's green. Let's see. Yes. In the French channel, it's also like this, 100% green. So I think maybe we can give the solution, Karina. What is it? Yes, it's a green project. Very well guessed. We will now go to the second business case. Of course, the most interesting is also to understand what's the rationale. Why is it green? Which we come to later. Karina will dive a bit into this. But first, we do our second quiz, which is about a 5-star hotel. Here, the manager thinks about investing into an automatic shading system. Yeah, so window blades, basically. With help of a sensor, the window shades are pulled down or up according to the intensity of the solar incidence. Is this green? Yeah, again, in the polls at the bottom right of your screen, you should see this question. And yeah, very nice. We have a few more votes now. I give you some more time to think about it. It's maybe not one of these straightforward cases. Yeah, we talked a bit about solar, but of course we want to make it a bit interesting. This is why we take a bit alternative investment measures for our little quiz. Green or not green for this 5-star hotel investing into an automatic shading system? Yes, I will wait a few more seconds to see what are the answers. How do people guess? Please don't be shy. Really, there is no, it's anonymous, as I said, so you don't have to worry. Okay, I see here now the results coming in. We have a 50-50, 50% green, 50% non-green. In the French channel, it is 80% green, 83% said it's green, 17% it's not green. So mixed feelings, I would say, on this one. Karina, can we provide the solution? Yes, it's green actually. And now probably a lot of you are wondering, what's the rationale? And this will we, of course, explain, and Karina will put these investment measures now a bit more into context.
Yeah, Julia, thank you. Thank you very much for guiding us through, and thank you so much to all of you that you participated in our little game. So I think perhaps now it's time to pause a bit and to think about what actually is green finance. And you can see here on this slide, and we have here used the help actually of the International Capital Market Associations, who also tried for their purposes to put this a little bit into perspective. What do we know? What do we mean when we speak about green finance? And then we have often also other terminology coming in, like sustainable finance, for example. And here, how they are defining it, they would set sustainable finance as the overarching terminology to green finance, social finance, and also ESG investing. So ESG investing obviously targeted to those who would invest to companies based on their different ESG ratings and ESG performances. I think on this conference, we're also having another session on ESG specifically. You also have the social aspect, of course, the social financing aspect, which could include, for example, dedicated financing schemes for social housing, but also education finance and gender finance. Also something we speak about in the lines of this small conference. And then there is green finance, and here you already see that green finance is a bit more difficult perhaps to define sometimes in comparison to what we mean by climate finance, where this is embedded in. So with green finance, and I hope you can all read this, we would also include actually pollution prevention and control, so any systems targeting this, natural resource conservation, but also biodiversity programs, for example, and other environmental objectives. I think we have some here also representatives from those sectors who focus on water, and also these can be certainly included here. And then we have climate finance, and the title of our small session here was climate-related loans. And climate-related is usually then set in the perspective of mitigation finance, so anything that is connected to renewable energy investment or energy efficiency. And on the other hand, the adaptation finance, so anything what supports or helps in order to better cope with the consequences of climate change. So we have more heat resistant crops, for example, which we may use in comparison to those we used to have, but also in water management systems in case there is a change in the precipitation patterns, so meaning there is more pronounced rains in times we never had it before, or no rain in times when we actually used it. Now think about our farmland back. Like one example, and I think this is in the context of green finance also an evergreen, on the African continent, the clean cook stoves, the picture here in the front. And to perhaps define this a little bit, a clean cook stove, and you all are all quite aware, I believe, is not only supporting that you have less bad air inside, so that would be green. It also helps that the communities are not depleting their surrounding natural resources, like cutting of trees for cooking reasons, and at the same time, because all this would usually set a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, it is also an important, small, but still relevant element for climate change mitigation, bringing down the CO2 emissions. Then our example here, the shading, where I think it was a bit more arguable from your perspective. We said, yes, it's green. It's actually smart investment, because by shading, you could bring down the cooling need actually for the hotel. And or ventilation need even for the hotel. And by this, we consider this a relevant climate change mitigation investment. You could even consider this a bit on the cross-sectional part, also adaptation, as it feels you also more comfortable and protects you against more heat or more intensive sun. And then we have our example of the farmer who now had to start irrigating because she couldn't rely anymore on the rainwater only in order to bring the crops through. So this investment we definitely consider as a mitigation, but also adaptation side. So she was adapting her business towards the consequences of climate change. And since she is now using solar PV pumps, instead of, for example, investing into diesel pumps, also providing a considerable contribution to climate change mitigation. So why do we all want and need this? And yes, I think all of us are aware about climate change and the consequences of climate change, but there is also more reasons why we really need to look into green. And there is, on the one hand, the rising population, not only on the African continent, but on a global scale, but specifically in Africa, we would expect that by 2050, and this is an estimation by the OECD, we would expect that 950 million people additionally would live in cities. And living in cities is more urbanization, is also, of course, more industrialization to some extent, and all these people will have a need for lighting, will have a need of also air condition, like all this electric demands, and of course at the same time have a demand of having cleaner air in the cities. So there is many challenges we have to deal with. At the same time, if you look at the African energy consumption, and here we speak about the primary energy consumption, so where does it come from? What is used? We have a high dependency on fossil fuels, and now Africa always looks pretty green here in the middle, but this green is a bit, and it has biofuels. And unfortunately, and that has quite something to do with the example we looked into also with the clean cook stove, that a lot of wood is actually used and burned for these biofuels and for this energy demand. So there is a little map, and I hope this is showing large enough for you, which actually illustrates that only 17% of the sub-Saharan Africa population have access to clean cooking. And then having this lens on your eye, perhaps the energy consumption for Africa looks already less favorable. So definitely, all those yesterday already discussed about, solar PV and other renewable energy sources, this is what is confirmed also by the slide here. And then last but not least, we wanted to pay your attention to something what is then also about companies' competitiveness. And I think very many had answered in the poll before that, energy outages is really a big problem. And we're really annoyed by this, and there need to be solution. And this is not only because it is annoying, it is really about being competitive against and having a good business running, because a stable electricity access should be there. And this the graph in the middle illustrates actually that with already like 800 hours per year energy shortage or outage, you would nearly use of 20% loss in sales. So you cannot produce, you have food decaying because cooling chains cannot be kept. And ideally, looking again at the energy sources from the previous slide, we need to achieve this with a combination of energy efficient measures so that we already need less energy, less pressure on the grid, and the supplying of very clean energy solutions. On the financial market as well, there is already a shift, and that has much to do with the global awareness of many of the customers, but also, of course, on the policy level, there is much of a change. What we see here on the left upper corner, there is the growing concern about risk of stranded assets and infrastructure due to the physical and the transition risk. What do we mean by this? There is, of course, like quite an awareness that if I'm investing in big agricultural corporations or also in buildings, and I have a high flooding risk, or on the contrary, for the agricultural side, not only the flooding, but also, for example, pronounced drought risks, that this, of course, is something what influences then also my loan book. On the other hand, we need urgently to scale up our efforts in order to combat climate change and also face other environmental challenges. And there are many more customers, first of all, really interested in investing in the right things. So there is already a change and a shift in what is money available for, and the same holds of course true for the larger international financial institutions who have under the pressure also of our international climate policies to shift considerable amounts of their financial products towards more sustainable financing. And this all comes together, and then now blended finance, this is on the left side here, also for the French translation, the new buzzword in order to overcome the financing gap for addressing our social so the sustainable development goals and also the NDC investment needs, meaning here that of course there is finance provided, far not enough on an international scale, but we need to blend this with private sector investments as well. And last but not least, on the right corner, we see more innovative finance solutions coming up in order to close this adaptation finance gap. It needs to be much more. What do we mean by this kind of solution? This is index-based insurances, for example, for agriculture, or also catastrophe bonds. If we want to look then in the overall green finance landscape here, so what we just have seen before, there is of course something what we would call the international enabling environment. So yes, there is funding provided. There's also the need for funding. There are investors who also want to see that banks and their financing means going in the right direction, that they are considered and risks are addressed appropriately. And those are providing then financing. Here we have the interlinking to what we have seen before, the national enabling environment, which comes with its energy markets, its environmental challenges, and also its NDCs. So the nationally determined contribution, the promises each of the countries is making on how to react on climate change. And here we see something when we talk about green loans, climate loans in the middle, that comes as a complex interaction of really smartly played relationships between, on the one hand, of course, the financial institutions, and then on the other hand, of technical advisors, auditors, who we need to, first of all, identify what is really green and how can I understand what is really green in this context, and in the end also for reporting. And then on the other hand, of course, those who provide the technologies, like traders or suppliers here, but also perhaps producers and those who really design own solutions in the markets. The banks can here really play out their catalytic role, which is very much needed. And I think those of you who come from financial institutions already guess now, if you haven't yet made this experience, it needs a basic understanding also on the bank side. What is really green and how can we reach out to our customers, make them aware and take them on this green financing journey. And before we go on the next, looking into what kind of opportunities we really mean by this, I just show it again, this green arrow here in the middle, I would like to take perhaps the one or other question in case we have some coming up. Or I don't know if we had some in the chat actually, Julia.
Yes, thank you, Karina. So there were two questions, one general one related to the materials and also presentation slides, etc. So just a reminder, all these recordings and slides will be made available after the event on the platform. Then secondly, we had an very interesting and good question from Besan Chongo related to our 5-star hotel question. So I read it out loud, and then I also have already an idea. It's a very good question. So for the 5-star hotel, I think to classify the automatic shading system as green would depend on the overall impact the hotel has on the climate, energy consumption, etc. For instance, if the shading system meant more power consumption for the hotel, then it would not be green. Your comment?
Very good. So these are the advanced participants here. No, it's right. And I think this is a bit now for the sake of quizzing, right? That this is a bit simplified. Yes, it's completely right. And of course, prior to really classifying something as green or defining as green, you would need to do the calculation of this. And the ultimate effect of having a proper shading system is, of course, that you would need to do less cooling of the building. And then, of course, there plays in a bit the trick, right? If you had a smart building with proper ventilation, you would perhaps anyhow need it in order to avoid additional air conditioning on top. But completely right, if the energy demand of this shading system now would be higher than what it can bring back in terms of energy savings, then you could not consider it green. So it would very much depend on the building position, and needs to have a certain effect demonstrated. Absolutely correct. Yeah. And usually we would ask our energy auditors to support us here and bringing this correctly calculated in. Yeah, thanks for the question. All right, if there are no other questions, Julia, then I think it is about time to continue, right?
Yes, exactly. No further questions.
All right, and then we go in with a little bit of your activity ask again.
Exactly. Thank you, Karina. Thank you. So we touched upon the topic already before with this bigger graphic. I mean, of course, when we talk about green and when we ask about green, it is about different technologies, different measures and actions you can do. I mean, there is a lot of variety. But obviously there are also a lot of different sectors. Yeah, each sector has its own energetic problem, and so has also the context or location. Yeah, the national environment is different, as we just saw with this question. Of course, this is something maybe green in a very hot environment where you need a lot of air conditioning, but in a very cold environment, maybe you wouldn't need the shading system. You rather want the building to heat up a little bit, so you reduce your heating costs, right? So this is why we now want to find out a bit more also on, which sector your institution is active in. And here, what we mean is, if you are representing a financial institution, then this basically means, okay, which sectors do your clients come from? Yeah, where's your portfolio mostly located? If you are now joining as an SME, as a business owner, then please just select the sector that your business is working in, where your business activity you would locate it to. If you are joining from an NGO or advisory service or association, then just choose the sector that you mostly represent or that you mostly advise towards to. So we made here a brief selection of 8 different sectors: transportation sector, residential sector, so private individuals, social services such as hospitals and schools, other types of services such as hotels and restaurants, housing. Housing can mean housing for private houses, residential homes, but may also be related to administrative buildings or public building construction. Then we have food processing sector along the food production value chain, manufacturing and production, and of course agriculture. And I think you should already be able to see this poll. I already can see some of the results in the English chat already, so I also encourage every one of you now listening to the French translated version to look in the bottom right corner of your screen. There you find the green live discussion button, and then the third column is the poll section where this question should be appearing now on what sector you associate yourselves to, or where do you mostly invest into. And I can already see a bit of results. So as of now, the leading sector is actually agriculture, 36%. Followed by transportation with 27%, manufacturing and production 18%, and then with around 9% each, hotels and restaurants and food processing. This is for the English-speaking channel, and then for the French channel, I'm waiting a few more minutes for the results. So the question was, what sector is your institution active in? Please just select one or more actually of the sectors you are involved in, as this is very relevant to the different types of green technologies and measures that apply to the specific sector. And of course, there's always also a different energy problematic. Where can the savings come? This always depends on the specific sector. I encourage also again in the French sector to vote. In the bottom right, you see the results. And it seems here we also have mostly agriculture involved participants, as well as social services. And yes, for the English channel, I already read it also here, agriculture is dominating the poll. With this, I hand over to Karina, who will tackle some of the question on, okay, is there even green technology chance in all these sectors, and what can be done? And dive in a bit into this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, for this short quizzing, and thank you all again for answering. And much agriculture here, so I hope you stay with us to the end of the session. And then I think for those who are engaged in agriculture, there's then also a next interesting session following this one. But before this, we would like to look into the different green finance options. And you just have answered on your poll which sector you're from. And here you see a short table, and don't be afraid, I will not go into each of those crosses, but what we want to illustrate with this slide is that, yes, no matter like agriculture, housing, residential, transportation, health and education, then also here the technologies is just a selection of what there is possible out there to finance. You can see there is really in all the sectors something what can be done. And yesterday we heard it, there is of course a lot which is relevant for the residential sector. If you want to invest into this improved cook stoves, we had fridges, air conditioning, different lighting systems, and rooftop solar also here across the board represented, as this is really something what is relevant for all of you. We have in the following selected a couple of examples, and we don't make it too easy with those examples. I hope also not too complicate, but we would like to also challenge a bit on, hey, there is really much more than just solar. So green finance is more than financing solar rooftops. It's always a good idea. It's super important. By no means, I don't want to diminish the needs for having proper financing schemes for all of this available. We will also not go so much into energy efficient household appliances, because we think this has started to arrive, and we would like to take the journey a little bit further here. So, and here we illustrate a little bit of what there is, for example, if we go in the sectors of food, chilling and freezing, or those who really need to transport frozen and or chilled goods and provide this kind of services. Also for healthcare providers who really need to have or depend on good temperatures for most of their products. And again, I just want to remind, there is of course this lack of like backup systems very often, and this may lead actually to very complicated situations sometimes when it comes to that food chains or chilling chains weren't kept throughout time, or you're losing lots of energy costs because like the equipment is not really right, or it's an oversized compressors. And the picture actually is something what we had from one of our market studies, and we came across this quite often actually. So a really sign for not having the right equipment and the right surroundings. So, and that's a challenge for many SMEs actually, from the perspective of what is available, but also that there needs to be financing provided so that you can really invest in most appropriate production equipment, and equipment which is really bit more automated, but also with the appropriate sizes. And perhaps this is really the most challenging, I think, for most banks to finance successfully in the end, because you really have to communicate well with technical advisors, with technical experts, energy auditors, for example, in order to be able to finance this successfully, and then in the end also to report it back, right? Another one we would like to draw your attention to is in the food processing and in the medical production side. So the challenge usually is these are not only energy intensive, but also water intensive sectors. And this has usually to do with the high hygiene standards which have to be kept. And here the solution actually lies in really fully automatized production lines. And now I'm taking the very a simple example. I mean, that was an example. Also, you see the calculations here in the right corner about of producing ketchup. So from putting in the tomatoes to bringing out the ketchup to invest into a clean in place system. So that may cost already at the higher end of 100,000 for an SME sized business. And the clean in place system as such would have the advantage that you don't need to disassemble and then reassemble the whole production line in order to clean it. But with the aid of special cleaning agents, the system can clean itself essentially. And after this ketchup producer had invested in this kind of production line, it was able to save about like 52% on the water side. Yeah, before electricity was needed a lot in order to heat up the water to a temperature of that it would be really also use for cleaning. So that made then 68% of the savings. And on the cleaning agent side, it was saving 52% of what was needed before. So altogether, this led to such considerable savings that the client in this case was able to pay off the system within like 2.5 years actually to what was there before. So it doesn't make only sense and that's of course the interest also then usually for the businesses and also the bank side from an environmental and climate perspective, but essentially also from an economic perspective here. Another example is the green mortgage, like a green housing loan. And here I would like to guide you through something what the IFC had illustrated at some point of time, because we know that especially green buildings is really something many financial institutions are also interested in. So what you can see here is the comparison of an investment from a standard building compared to a green building. And this is something what not the AFC has only estimated. That's just general estimation that you would, the green part of what a new building makes it then greener compared to the standard is about 3% higher costs on the investment side. So if you have this 50,000 base purchase cost of a standard building, the green building would cost $1,500 more. Now the customer here is asked to have a down payment of 20%. I think this is quite common market standards. And then after having done this down payment, a loan amount of 41,200, excuse me, for the green building compared to the 40,000 on the standard mortgage would need to take out. There is no preferential interest rate here. It's 11% in this case, and it has a loan tenor of 20 years. So up to now, it seems a bit, on the losing side, right? You need to take out more money. You don't get anything preferential, not on the tenor, not on the interest rate actually. So your monthly payment, if you would compare this to your neighbor with a standard building, would be $425, while the neighbor is only paying every month over this 20 years, $413. But over time, I think you can be sitting more relaxed in front of your house because it has proper shading, it has a very efficient air condition, good ventilation, perhaps a bit of a solar PV on the roof, so that you can, or solar heating, so that you can satisfy parts of the energy demand. out of your own resources, and every month actually your utility savings compared to those of your neighbors are $20 less. And even though that doesn't sound so much, it still reflects then that actually your monthly costs which you have to pay is only at $405 compared to the still $413 from the standard building. So the customer still saves around 2%, as you can see here, while the bank has still the 30% more earned in the end compared to a standard building financing loan. So I think it's for both sides a quite interesting case, actually. And then additionally to, of course, efficient irrigation systems, and perhaps also solar pumps, there is also other opportunities here on the next slide for the agricultural side. And this has a bit to do with the plowing and how the soil preparation work is actually done during the after the harvest, for example, and prior to seeding or preparing for the next growing season. So traditionally, we have farmers that would practice farming with a plow. Quite high energy costs. You have usually different steps, and those of you who are in agriculture know this better than I do. So there is always different parts. You usually go several times on your land plot until you have prepared the soil for the next seeding season. This all leads to a high erosion of fertile soil. So in many countries, we face the problem that the soil is kept open for some time, and that you have, especially then also under hotter and drier climates, really a lot of wind blowing of this fertile soil. Opening the soil also decreases, from the climate perspective, the CO2, which is usually kept already within the soil, and all those practices of going with a diesel engine, with your tractor across the field, of course, emits a lot of additional greenhouse gases. And now keeping the soil open in times of droughts and like water scarcity very often really leads to reduced soils. So that yields, excuse me. So all this, and that's what you want to indicate here on the right side with this example of the no-tilling, or as you may know this perhaps better under the term of direct seeding equipment. You can really do considerable savings on the greenhouse gas emissions from the tractor, from your preparation, and such an investment is done with about like $20,000 starting roundabout, and usually then would pay off about like 5 seasons. So it's usually up to 5 years, at least in the European context, we would consider it like this, only on the resources saved, so only on actually having less diesel used for the land preparation. If you would consider the also reduced workforce need, then this would even pay off much, much faster. All right, so I hope that this journey through the different investment opportunities as small illustrations with a bit of interest. And before we start or look into what's the normal starting point and how to develop a green loan product and loan portfolio, I would like to ask Julia if you have other questions coming through the chat which need to be answered.
Hi, Karina. So far, we have not received any additional questions, neither in the French nor in the English channel. So here again, the reminder to all of you, in the bottom right, you have this interactive discussion or live discussion button in green. And here in the chat, or under the question function, you can just post your comments or questions directly, and we will then address them accordingly. If you maybe after you have thought about the presentation, I mean, we also know it's a lot of information, it's a lot of inputs, different examples. So please don't hesitate reaching out to us directly if you want to after the session. You find us through the platform, we are registered there, so just shoot us a message, and yeah, we are happy to engage.
Thanks, Julia. Then, as this is not the case for questions at the moment, then I would continue here. And you see this little circle we have prepared on how to start. And we deliberately didn't make this like a line or a production line, but rather present this as a circle. So under number 1 here, we have put, okay, first you have, of course, to go back and understand what's the big picture of the market you're in. And do you remember perhaps how we started earlier on our presentation, looking at, okay, what's the energy demand, what's the energy mix, because on this it also depends of what you can save in terms of greenhouse gases, what are the sectors which really need a lot of energy, where you have the best energy efficiency potentials, and which of those sectors have a realistic chance also to perhaps invest into renewable energy supplies. On a second step, and this is a bit going in parallel, what we always would do is like accompanying a bank and know your portfolio. So perhaps you have already, after you understood the market better, customers in your portfolio where you actually realize, oh yes, they're already there, they're investing into this, and there is interest. And we have actually many more of those clients in this specific sector, many more agricultural clients who may have an interest in a efficient irrigation system and solar pumps, or we have many more hotels and office buildings who would need to invest into refurbishment of their air conditioning. And by this, you can already start harvesting your low-hanging fruits. And that sounds always a bit like a no-brainer, but it's super important for the banks on their way to be a bit the catalyst, you know, to also start teaching own stuff on those opportunities and getting a feeling for why now this is actually perhaps a better investment, although they have invested into this without being yet aware about this. Based on this, you would then identify the target groups and select the first technologies. And here we really would recommend starting, if it's still a new field for you, with a few technologies. And although we tried now to be a bit challenging with what is out there in the market, and that there is plenty of things, of course, it's a fair deal to start with like renewable energy, if that's the easiest and the best and the most promising for the market, but may not be necessarily the case. It may be also the supplier agreement, which can help you in terms of like investing into fridges and air conditioning systems, etc., on a very small scale. So based on this, you would in-house from the banking side develop this appropriate loan products. And here it may be interesting for you to perhaps get an international financial institution on your side in order to be able to also overcome a bit more higher costs for those technologies, and to be able to really provide also better loans, or being able at least towards the customer to demonstrate, although there is not much saving now on the interest rate side, overall on the cash flow, this investment pays off rather quickly, which then leads really to training of staff. And I think this is for many of the financial institutions usually the tougher investment also to be done. You really need to train staff. There is unfortunately no other way around. You can bring this down a little bit by engaging stakeholders from the market, suppliers. There can be very smart joint actions together for the start, so that you can leverage your newly gained knowledge with like good supplier agreements, like if you have defined them products which are really on the scalable side, insulation for the walls, for example, better windows, and by this you can start marketing and building here under number 6 fairly easy a green loan portfolio. And by this already we come to this point where we have presented this here as a circle. So if ideally then you have gained confidence, you have really built successfully a loan portfolio with like 2 or 3 very targeted investment types, then you can start branching out and including more, and perhaps even because you have now staff which understands what means green finance, to really branching out also to more challenging and not so straightforward and easy to comprehend investment types here. And by this also perhaps gaining new market shares and customers. Perhaps a little example on this side. Here we go back to the buildings, as I believe this should be most uncommon for all of you. So you have 2 options, right? If you want to check on your portfolio, okay, efficient buildings, yes, on the market, that's very much needed. And then on your portfolio, you may have already 2 interesting target groups here. And this is on the left side, very well visible. So there is, we can finance either the end clients, so the ones who are buying the apartment in the end, or you can finance developers, those who really invest into larger scale building development. Like in this case here, we have the example of affordable student housing or office space. I think very clear, we don't need to explain that so much more. And with the end clients, again, then this perspective may branch out to different sectors on social infrastructure side, like schools, kindergartens, hospitals, for example, or for the private individuals for affordable housing. And then on the right side of this a bit more tabular looking illustration, you have either the options of renovation and own construction. So you would need to set your definitions of what is here acceptable under green, and or you have even pre-designed greenhouses. And I don't know, Julia, if you perhaps would like on this example to come in with one of our recent experiences.
Yes, thank you, Karina. Exactly, it was in one of the African countries where we also started, of course, with the market screening. So what is the enabling environment when we put it together with the very first graphic we see, what is there, what is done. And it was very interesting to see because, of course, it is interesting to see what is already in the market. So for instance, in that specific context, there were already developers active in the market who were designing low-cost housing according to very energy efficient standards. So they were actually even certifying their buildings, their construction work as per design. So you knew as a bank, okay, these buildings are totally green, they lead to more, at least 20% energy savings compared to the base case. They count with a green certificate. So, okay, we can rely on them. So then, as a financial institution, you can think, how do you play it, right? Do you maybe engage with these developers and see, okay, what type of clients, come to you? Or maybe I have also clients who are looking for houses, that I can bring to you that are credible, whom I can offer a direct fitting loan product to financing, an own house, for instance. And these type of agreements can be, very good opportunity. And of course, they also save time, or you leverage also information on other on your collaboration partners that of course know about more the technical side, since you then as a bank do not have to act too much into verification of is this green now or not. Leveraging on strong partners is of course a very good opportunity. And in order to do that, you really have to know, okay, but what is happening in my market? Like, are there any such developers, or is this topic very, very, very new? Maybe you get in touch with the Green Building Council. There are those institutions, associations in the respective country. Is there such a thing? And then how can we work with them? What do they see is the demand? And this is one of the examples. On the other hand, as Karina said, you may as well directly see if these developers need financing, right? But of course, this is to evaluate according to your institution's capacities and needs, and as it is a completely different financing model. And with this, I hand back to Karina, who will, I guess, say a bit more on these specific questions.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. And I think just on the examples what Julia explained further for financing buildings, we have put here on the right side 5 key questions. Actually, you would always need to start with and you need to answer in order to be successful. So, what really fits my client profile best? Am I having the right capacities in my institution, or do I need something on to back this up? Is this the right risk level I'm already in, right? Like financing developers is, of course, sounds very nice and easy to be done, but you all know also that's something what you would need to have also the skills for. Or do I want to really finance special purpose vehicles and for the energy market who are investing then, I don't know, in a 5 megawatt a solar PV plant or biogas plant, for example? This is really different skills, but also different risk I'm engaging in. And then having all this answered, and I still want to do this because it is within my risk appetite, it is also within what I basically have available. Perhaps even though I have great project finance department, they would still need some additional resources or trainings in order to do this successfully and also efficiently. And then last but not least, I'm always coming back to this, and I want to remind you on this overall picture, right? And how the banks is really, how the banks and the financials are working within the overall market, and what partners perhaps not only needing, but partners would I like to have on my side. And in our experience, most of the time, those financial institutions were really successful in building a comparatively large portfolio if they're really were relying on partners, not in terms of necessarily only TA, but partners in the market, and we're focusing on like a few very effective investment opportunities. And Julia, before we close our session, I wanted to ask you if there are no perhaps questions we have received.
Yes, thank you, Karina. We have received quite some questions. Let me see where to start. So first of all, some questions related to the previous slide. Maybe you can go one step back to the circle we showed. There is one question. In your loop, I did not see any room for the reporting aspect of the green lending. Would you consider it as a separate process activity?
This is a very good question. So, an additional activity, not really. This is something what you need to develop within your products, if you will. So if you want to do a reliable and proper green loan product, you will always have to report and to demonstrate that you achieve this impact. So that's really something what you have to, once you have identified the technologies, meaning you have defined the eligibility criteria of what is really considered to be green, you also have to think on how to gather then those information back from the clients and to build it in your internal product cycle in order to successfully report this, either for your own, right, your own financial institution, you want to demonstrate the impact you are having with your green loans, or you have the needs to report it back to someone who was sitting with you in the boat, for example, for providing financing needs on the green side. A very good question indeed.
Yes, then we have another question also from Nelly Elimbi asking for the step 1 that we showed there on the circle. Given the lack of information in some of our markets, what sources would you advise to get a sense of the market size and opportunities?
I'm guessing here that you mean by lack of information that usually there is not updated really statistics necessarily on how your markets look like. That was also our experience. It's not so easy to get knowledge about like how many customers and how big perhaps a certain sector really is. And that's also our experience. And if you remember a bit, I said slightly that point 1 and 2 of this loop actually really moves very close together. And that has to do like what we would do is we would go out to the market. It's really conducting about interviews. So then the efforts in getting this information is a bit higher. And then perhaps you may want to start rather close to your portfolio and then trying to find out more about your market. Ideally, of course, you have market information, but if this is not the case and very limited, you can start also from the view of your portfolio and then branching out to customer interviews. So interviews with the SMEs, your SME clients, for example, or your agricultural clients, and then also conducting interviews with those who would actually provide usually the technologies. And very often when we speak about climate investments, if it's not adaptation, but for mitigation for sure, we talk about technology. So you would need to find out who are the technology providers, go to the associations, speak with the different associations you have in the market, the chambers of commerce, wherever they are. So it's very hands-on work, but also we usually do then on our end in order to identify what can be really there.
Thank you, Karina. And then we have also some more questions in the French live stream. Some examples of financial or non-financial institutions involved in awareness raising or education in relation to green finance near SMEs, particularly in French-speaking Africa. I can maybe also start. I'm not sure if we can now name certain ones because I think that list might be very long also then which specific country. I mean, in the African continent, you have so many different countries. But as a general hint, what I can also already provide is, for instance, that typically there are some associations, for instance, Renewable Energy Association, those typically exist in the different countries. Then what you can also look for is Green Building Council. This also is specifically for the building, or Architects Association. These type of specific industry associations can really help in also getting a picture or getting an idea of what are the problematics in the country, and then also typically do some work of awareness raising, as this is also in their interest. I don't know, Karina, if you have.
No, very good point. And I'm not sure that the question was about like awareness raising and awareness for the banks and for the market in general.
Yeah, or examples of financial or non-financial institutions who do this or who are involved in this.
I mean, I think awareness is still a very key part. And even if I said so bluntly, right? Okay, yes, of course, renewable energy is always a good idea. But even here we have, and I think this is perhaps also the question aiming at, considerable lack of knowledge and also awareness of how can you actually approach all of this. And there are, of course, now quite some institutions out there. This is often jointly together also with an international international stakeholders who would now invest into different platforms also, where then training measures can be provided for the financial institutions on the one hand. So you have to look out for something like this, what is already offered, and then to understand, okay, what do I have to have ready as a financial institution in-house in order to successfully in my market finance renewable energy. And then on the other hand, also for those who would like to invest, to understand, okay, what do I pay attention to? Because if there is the willingness to do something about renewable energy, that's the one side, but I completely agree with this comment and question that I also need to understand on how can I do this best. So what do I pay attention to? Do I have my operations and maintenance contractual partner in place? Is this already to the point I need it? When actually I can consider a design perhaps to be a good design without now necessarily being an expert on this. And I think you pointed it out, like associations really help here already, and they do also provide some parts of the training. But I would also recommend like looking out for other training offers, and this is then usually very country specific. To this end.
Exactly. And I think then when it's about awareness raising for the clients, this can also really be done through marketing material, right? It's really a marketing that informs, for instance, then rather than just pushes for some topics.
And if you want to educate your clients, what has been done is like having small calculators and also checklists ready for your clients, right? I mean, you don't want your clients to run open eyes into a wrongly sized and not properly connected solar PV investment in the end. Now I'm staying at this, but so there is like simple checklists. So if all of this is there, then you're also ready, first of all, to get finance. That is spares you already time, and you can be already a bit on the safer side that you have thought of all the points. Similarly for the building sector, for example.
Okay, then we come to the next question. We got quite some more in here. So the next question is the financing in this field going to banks or governments? I think this depends, right, Karina? What do you say?
this is interesting, is the financing. So if you speak about international financing, that can be both, right? Usually banks would receive this through the ways of guarantee schemes, but also in terms of like concessional lines. For example, I mean, I think we have all understood that doing green is effort and needs to be financed. So there is concessional lines and TA available if that's the financing. But I think also governments get quite direct support. Now, I'm not so much working on the side of government finance, but it's, yeah, I think there is both available. And some banks even focus on, or they're large enough on municipal finance, if this is the question here.
Next question. I think it's interesting aspects. Not sure we can really answer it, but it is definitely good point to be raised and to be taken up in further projects and by the EIB is one question. I work on the development of construction projects for gasifiers to produce electricity. The big problem for promoters is how to mobilize funding. Does the EIB have a financing window for this type of private promoters, especially since these are projects initiated within the framework of CO2 sequestration?
This is indeed a very super interesting question, but I think, we are not really the right audience in this case to answer, but perhaps as it is already so well formulated, we can find a way in passing this on also to the colleagues from the EIB. Yeah, I don't know, do we have more questions or?
Yes, 1 second. We have another question here on financing a green loan portfolio. What type of financing is available to fund green finance portfolio given the investment cycle for green finance? I think this maybe this relates to different type of investments also that are possible to be financed. I would understand it.
I'm not sure. So the question again, please, was like, what kind of refinancing is available?
What type of financing is available to fund green finance portfolio given the investment cycle for green finance?
It sounds to me a bit like that this is a question from a financial institution. So if they're interested in building a green portfolio and then what kind of funding there would be available. I think I tapped a bit into this with the previous answer that of course there is credit lines available on international level, also concessional lines in order to, and that's very right, the green cycle for the lending side also being a bit more complex very often. So that would be one of the options, but it's also still possible, I think, to use it out of own funds. What we see in our work very often is, of course, that the loan tenor which is available for green is sometimes too short compared to what is really needed. And here, those concessional lines usually come in with much better loan tenors and good maturities for the lending. I hope that answered it.
Yeah. Then we have another question saying, as an innovation center, we are always asked if we have ideas on scaling sustainable buildings in Nigeria. Knowing that price affects everything, not the impact side, how do we ensure that financiers will see this from a development aspect as well as investment?
I think that comes a bit back to our example, right?
Exactly.
And hopefully, to me, this looks like, and if I'm not mistaken, there was yesterday also a bank from Nigeria present. So I think that's that's a really good point of collaboration and also for joint action. That's actually the ideal case, and perhaps it makes sense as an innovation center. Now, I don't know your standpoint within the country and your outreach, but then also to perhaps reaching out to the financial institutions from your end and trying to engage in joint collaboration about awareness raising, but then perhaps also in bringing together those who are developing and trying to develop a smart loan product for financing this green designed buildings.
Yes, perfect. And now we have another question. Banks in Africa are not generally investment banks. Is it possible for it to position itself to offer this type of financing to SMEs or SMIs when we know that these are very long-term loans, at least 15 years when it comes to gasification of the biomass, for example, needed for green climate projects?
Yeah, I think we had this just a bit before, right? It's true. It's very often, and I completely agree here, a challenge that the maturity is simply too short of what is available in the market. So here it's really, I just can hope that then there is financing found, and you can find like international or perhaps also other partners in order to be able to provide also longer maturity loans within the market. And I agree, it is often one of the big barriers for financing, not only biogas, but can be also, if we speak about SMEs, sometimes loan tenors of 7 years is challenging. Yeah, yes. We get a bit the hint that we have only 5 minutes left to the session, Julia.
Yes. I think we are nearly through our questions. I think with this one on the maturity, it's also about, maybe where to start or to identify. And this is also in this beginning cycle, right? What can you finance? What are the type of clients? So maybe to start with green loans that do not require these long-term types, right? If we heard yesterday from the example, the energy efficient fridges, like household appliances can be a start, or then maybe not the big PV project finance with 10 megawatt, but maybe, a smaller rooftop systems for own consumption is then rather the thing with the smaller payback period. So this could be an option.
Yeah. So this is very right. I mean, if you really want to start also in order to get it on in the first place, you should really focus on your low-hanging fruits. I think that's very clear, and then this should be essentially something what you are able also to finance within the normal frames of your current loan conditions.
Exactly. We have a few more questions, but I think we wrap it up now and maybe get to them later. I don't know. We have one more slide, right, with the one quick quiz which we want to wrap up.
Yeah, we have a finalizing quiz for you. It is a bit of a fun question, perhaps, very much for the banks. And although we say it's a fun question, we don't mean it as a joke, actually, because it was an interesting, or like a couple of occasions, interesting discussions we had. I will shoot it now, Julia. Oh, no, I went back one slide. So here we go.
Here we go. Perfect. So it is the same style as our beginning quizzes, if you remember the green or not green game. So we have one last question in this sense. So now we have a financial institution which is located in an area with an average temperature of 33 degrees Celsius. And they think about loosening a bit the strict dress code for the employees. So instead of a whole suit, blazer, long blouses, you are allowed to maybe wear a t-shirt or even shorts. is this green? And now again, I ask you to look in the polls section under the live discussion button on the bottom right of your screen to vote yes or no, green or not, changing the dress code policy in your financial institution. Let's wait a few more minutes to see what the audience thinks. It's definitely not a conventional green investment, what you would have in mind in the first place. But curious to see your answers. So just click on live discussion in the bottom right, and then you should see under the polls header the question on green or not green. Is it green for a financial institution if they are loosening a bit their strict dress code and allow employees to come, for instance, with a t-shirt if it's really hot outside also? What do you think? Give you a few more minutes. Let's see how the responses are. Okay, I'm seeing already it's mixed feelings. I can say, yeah. We have different opinions here, Karina. I think you can shoot now. I think we have 60% saying green, actually.
Before I show our answer, I have to say it's mixed feelings too, right? On our hand, but we would still, giving our discussion, say yes, this can be very green because it would really allow often office space being less cooled down, right? Because if you are comfortable at a 23 degrees inside in your clothes, instead of like, because you are really on a suit and a tie, you need considerably cooler ambient temperature, then you also need much more energy in this case. I said it's a bit of a fun question because you can, of course, it is not an investment per se, right? It is just a decision to be taken, which can also support this. And perhaps sometimes it's nice in all this green discussion, we sometimes just forget that also the financial institutions are, of course, businesses who can save and invest and do a lot about also on their end about saving greenhouse gases and renewable energy. So just perhaps to also finish with this a little bit of food for thought in this case. Yes, and I think with this, we would end our session here. And thanks so much for being with us, for all your questions, which were really great to have, and also participating in our polls. And yeah, we hope we can have a chance to answer the other questions. I just would like to announce now that there is a 15 minutes break here in this channel, and at 11:30 GMT we will continue here with the agricultural finance section. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.